I came home from military duty on Christmas Eve and found my disabled Marine father eating dinner alone in the garage. Not because we didn't have room inside. Not because he wanted privacy. But because my stepbrother said his wheelchair would ruin the engagement photos. I wish I could tell you that I immediately knew what to do. I wish I could tell you I marched into that living room with the confidence people assume comes with wearing a uniform. But the truth is, I've spent my entire adult life protecting strangers more easily than I've protected the people I love. And that night, standing in my mother's driveway with my duffel bag still over my shoulder, I realized I had missed something happening right in front of me for years. My name is Emma Brooks. I'm 36 years old, a captain in the Army National Guard, and for most of my life, I believed that showing up was enough. You show up for your unit. You show up for your mission. You show up for your family. I thought if I kept doing that, the people I loved would be okay. I was wrong. The house looked exactly the same from the outside. White Christmas lights wrapped around the porch railings. A wreath hung neatly on the front door. Music drifted through the windows while laughter spilled out into the cold North Carolina air. Inside, my stepbrother Eric was celebrating his engagement. There were catered appetizers arranged on polished trays, champagne glasses clinking together, and guests dressed like they belonged in holiday commercials. I stood on the porch in my travel uniform, exhausted from months away, thinking only about seeing my father. Frank Brooks wasn't my biological father. He didn't have to choose me. When I was 9 years old and my mother died, he stepped into a life that wasn't his responsibility and made sure I never felt unwanted. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to change a tire, how to fold an American flag, how to look someone in the eye and keep my word. And before every deployment or training assignment, he always said the same thing. You don't leave people behind. Even after the stroke took most of his speech 11 years ago, he'd still squeeze my hand and find some way to remind me. So when I walked through that front door and didn't see him sitting in his usual chair, something inside me tightened. I hugged my stepmother, Linda. She smelled like expensive perfume and stress. "You made it," she said, already looking over my shoulder toward the guests. "Where's Dad?" I asked. She adjusted the sleeve of her blouse before answering. "Oh, he's resting." I nodded automatically. Months of military schedules had trained me not to question quick explanations. But then I noticed something strange. The framed Marine Corps photograph that always sat above the fireplace was gone. In its place was an engagement portrait of Eric and Chloe. The Purple Heart display case wasn't on the bookshelf, and every family photo in the living room had been rearranged until Frank had almost disappeared from the walls of the house he'd lived in for decades. I heard laughter from the dining room. I heard Eric bragging to his friends. And beneath all of it, I heard something else. A faint metallic squeak. Slow. Uneven. The sound of an old wheelchair wheel that desperately needed oil. I followed it through the kitchen, past the laundry room, toward the side door leading into the garage. The air changed before I even stepped inside. It smelled like cold concrete and motor oil. The fluorescent light overhead flickered once before settling. And there he was. My father sat in his wheelchair beside a workbench covered in paint cans and extension cords. He wore an old flannel shirt instead of the Marine jacket he loved. A paper plate of cold food rested on top of a toolbox. His blanket had slipped halfway to the floor. For a second, I couldn't move. I had spent months believing he was safe here. Believing the checks I sent home mattered. Believing the people I trusted had been taking care of him. Frank looked up when he saw me. His tired eyes widened, then softened. He reached for my hand with fingers twisted by age and illness. I knelt beside him and swallowed hard against the lump in my throat. "Dad," I whispered. He squeezed my hand weakly. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Eric stopped in the garage doorway. His expression tightened. "Emma," he said carefully, "don't make this into a thing." I stared at him. "You put him out here?" He exhaled like I was being unreasonable. "Tonight's important," he said. "The guests are inside. The photos are inside. This was just easier." I looked back at Frank. At the man who taught me never to leave anyone behind. Then I looked down and realized he had slipped something into my palm. It was a small folded piece of paper. On it, written in shaky handwriting, was a name, Harlan Pierce, and a phone number. I didn't know who Harlan Pierce was. I only knew that my father had waited until Christmas Eve to ask me for help. For most of my life, Frank Brooks was the safest place I knew.
That may sound strange, because he was never a soft man. He did not use many words. He did not believe in wasting complaints. He had been a Marine before I was born, and even after age bent his back and the stroke stole the steadiness from his voice, something about him still felt solid.
When I was 9 years old, after my mother died, I stopped expecting adults to stay. Frank was the exception. He was my mother's closest friend from years before I understood anything about bills, grief, or promises made in hospital rooms. I do not know what she asked him before she passed. I only know that 1 week after her funeral, Frank stood in the doorway of the small apartment where I had been living with a neighbor, holding a paper grocery bag full of peanut butter, apples, and a folded pink blanket. He looked terrified. I remember that more clearly than anything. This big retired Marine, standing there like he had no idea how to raise a little girl, cleared his throat and said, "I've got a room ready if you want it." He did not say, "You have to come." He did not say, "You owe me." He gave me a choice when I had lost almost every other one. So I chose him. Frank's house was not fancy. It was a one-story place outside Wilmington, North Carolina, with creaking floors, a yard that flooded after heavy rain, and a kitchen table with one leg shorter than the others. But to me, it felt like a fortress. He packed my lunches badly. He braided my hair worse. He once sent me to school with 2 different shoes because he said they were both black enough. But he showed up. Every parent-teacher conference. Every dentist appointment. Every Friday night when I pretended I was too old to care whether someone came to my school choir concerts. He always sat in the back row, arms crossed, face unreadable, like he was guarding the exits. Years later, when I joined the Army National Guard, people asked if Frank was proud. I never knew how to answer. Frank was not the kind of father who shouted from the bleachers or posted long messages online. His pride came in quiet forms. Fresh tires on my old car before I drove to drill weekend. A handwritten checklist tucked into my duffel. Coffee waiting on the counter at 4 a.m. when I had to report before sunrise. And always the same words when I left. "You don't leave people behind." He said it when I left for basic. He said it before my first long training rotation. He said it the morning I pinned on captain. Then the stroke came. I was 25. Frank was 78. One phone call from my stepmother, Linda, and the shape of our family changed.
By then, Frank had married Linda for reasons I still did not fully understand. She had been widowed young and had a son named Eric, who was only 2 years younger than me. Frank said loneliness made people take chances. I think he believed he could build a family big enough that no one inside it would feel abandoned.
For a while, it almost worked. Linda kept the house neat. She cooked Sunday dinners. She sent Christmas cards with all our names written in careful script. Eric called Frank Sir when he wanted something and Frank when he did not. I noticed that early. I noticed a lot of things early, but I was young enough to believe noticing was the same as understanding.
After the stroke, Frank could still think clearly, but speech became difficult. Some days he could say a full sentence if he had enough time. Other days, only 1 or 2 words came out, dragged from somewhere deep and stubborn. His right side weakened. His hands shook. The wheelchair arrived before anyone was ready to say the word permanent. Linda became the person in charge of the house. Not officially. Not with any family meeting. It just happened. She kept the medication schedule taped inside a cabinet. She knew which doctor to call. She answered the phone when relatives checked in. She told people Frank was resting before anyone could ask to speak with him. At first, I was grateful. I was still building my military career. I worked full-time in logistics and drilled with my unit on top of that. Some months I was gone more than I was home. Linda would say, "Don't worry about your father, Emma. Focus on your duty." So I did. That sentence became a kind of permission slip. I sent money every month, for Frank's care, I thought, for physical therapy, better blankets, repairs to the wheelchair, anything he might need. Linda always thanked me in the same tired voice.
You have no idea how much this helps. I believed her. Maybe I needed to. Because believing her meant I was still doing my part. The Christmas Eve, everything changed. I drove home straight from the base with my uniform jacket folded across the passenger seat and my duffel bag in the back. My body was exhausted, but my mind kept jumping ahead to Frank.
I pictured him in his usual chair by the fireplace, the one near the window where afternoon light always found his hands. I pictured his Marine Corps photograph above the mantel. I pictured the wooden display case holding his Purple Heart on the bookshelf, not because he liked showing it off, but because I had put it there years ago and he had never asked me to move it.
When I turned into the driveway, the house was glowing.
White lights wrapped around the porch. Cars lined both sides of the street. Through the front window, I could see people moving around with champagne glasses and bright holiday sweaters. Eric and Chloe's engagement party had become bigger than Linda had described on the phone.
I sat in my truck for a moment, looking at all those cars. Something about it made me hesitate. Not fear exactly. More like the old feeling I used to get as a child, before walking into a room where adults had already decided what version of me they wanted. I took a breath, grabbed my bag, and went inside. The first person I saw was Linda. She looked elegant in a cream blouse and gold earrings, her hair sprayed into a smooth shape that did not move when she turned. She hugged me with one arm, careful not to smudge her lipstick. "You made it," she said. "I told you I would." Her eyes moved over my clothes. "You're still in uniform." "I came straight here." "Of course," she said, but her smile tightened. "Maybe change before photos. Eric wants everything to look cohesive." Cohesive. That was the first red flag, though I did not name it then. I had just come home after months away, and the first thing my stepmother noticed was whether I fit the picture.
Eric appeared behind her in a navy suit that looked new. He was taller than me, polished in the way men get when they have been praised too often for standing still. Chloe stood beside him, beautiful and nervous, one hand resting lightly against his sleeve.
"Captain Brooks," Eric said, raising his glass. "Glad you could make an appearance."
"Not glad you are home. Not Frank will be happy." An appearance. I smiled because that was what the room expected. "Congratulations," I said.
Chloe hugged me gently. "We're so happy you're here."
I believed she meant it, or at least wanted to. Eric's eyes flicked to my duffel bag, then toward the staircase, even though Frank had not used stairs in 11 years. "Guest room's full of coats," he said. "You can put your stuff in the laundry room." Before I could answer, a burst of laughter came from the living room. Someone called Eric's name. He turned immediately, relieved to be pulled away. I looked past him toward the fireplace. And that was when I noticed the second red flag. Frank's Marine Corps photograph was gone.
For years, it had sat above the mantel in a simple black frame. Frank at 22, unsmiling, shoulders straight, wearing a uniform that looked too heavy for the boy inside it. I had grown up under that photograph. I had measured my own courage against it more times than I could count.
Now an engagement portrait of Eric and Chloe stood in its place. They were smiling in a field somewhere, backlit by golden hour, perfect and expensive looking. On the bookshelf, the Purple Heart display case was missing too. I stared at the empty space where it should have been. Linda saw me looking. "Oh," she said quickly. "I moved some of Frank's older things. We needed the room." "Where is he?" I asked. Her answer came too fast. "Resting." "At 7 o'clock on Christmas Eve?" "He gets overwhelmed now." There it was again. Now. As if Frank had become a different category of person. As if being old and disabled meant any decision made around him could be explained by saying he preferred it that way. I wanted to go to him immediately, but Linda touched my arm. "Let him sleep a little. Eric's about to make a toast." Her fingers were light, but the message was not. "Wait. Smile. Do not interrupt." It was strange how easily I obeyed. I had commanded soldiers during training operations. I had corrected officers twice my age when procedure required it. I had stood in briefing rooms with maps, radios, and consequences. But in that house, I was still the girl Frank brought home with a pink blanket, still trying not to seem ungrateful.
So I stood near the edge of the living room while Eric gave his toast. He thanked Chloe. He thanked Linda. He thanked friends who had flown in. He made a joke about surviving family chaos, and everyone laughed. Frank's name did not come up once.
Not when Eric mentioned growing up in that house.
Not when he talked about learning responsibility. Not when he raised his glass and said, "To the people who made me who I am."
I felt something cold settle under my ribs. Across the room, Linda clapped with bright, wet eyes.
I wondered if she noticed the omission.
Then I saw her glance at me just for a second.
She noticed.
She simply chose not to correct it.
After the toast, guests moved toward the dining room. A photographer arranged people near the fireplace. Linda called for immediate family. Eric waved me over, then paused.
Maybe without the uniform jacket, he said quietly. I looked at him.
What?
It's just the theme is warm holiday formal, not military.
Chloe's face tightened with embarrassment. Eric.
What? I'm just saying.
I could feel people pretending not to listen.
That was the family dynamic in its purest form. Eric said something cruel softly enough to deny it later. Linda let silence protect him. Everyone else adjusted around the discomfort.
And I swallowed mine because I had been trained by years of living there to keep the peace. I took off the jacket. I hate admitting that, even now.
I folded it over my arm and stepped into the photo.
The photographer smiled. Great, everyone squeeze in.
I looked at the empty space beside Linda.
Where's Dad?
Linda blinked. Emma, we talked about this. No, I said. You said he was resting.
Eric's smile disappeared.
He's fine. Then he can be in the picture.
The room changed.
Not loudly.
The music still played. Glasses still clinked in the dining room, but the air around us tightened.
Eric leaned closer. Don't start. 2 words. Low, controlled, familiar. That was the power imbalance I had refused to see for years. Eric did not need to raise his voice because the house had already been trained to bend around him.
Linda's hand found my elbow again. "Please," she whispered, "not tonight."
Not tonight.
How many small wrongs had been hidden inside those 2 words?
I pulled my arm away gently.
I want to see my father.
Before anyone could stop me, I walked past the fireplace, down the hall, and toward the back of the house.
That was when I heard it. A faint metallic squeak. Slow. Uneven.
Coming from behind the laundry room door.
The sound of a wheelchair wheel that should have been repaired months ago.
And suddenly, every small thing I had noticed since walking in no longer felt small at all.
I followed the sound down the hall with my uniform jacket still folded over my arm.
The closer I got to the laundry room, the clearer the sound became. One slow squeak, a pause, then another. It was not loud enough for the guests to hear over the Christmas music, but it was loud enough for me.
That was the first thing that hurt. Not that my father was hidden. That he had been hidden so carefully.
The laundry room door was half open. Beyond it, the side door to the garage stood cracked just enough for cold air to slide into the hallway. I pushed it open, and the smell of concrete, motor oil, and old cardboard hit me before the light did.
Frank sat beside the workbench in his wheelchair.
His chair was angled toward the wall, not the door, as if even his view had been considered too much for the party. A paper plate rested on a red toolbox beside him. Ham, green beans, a roll that looked like it had been taken from the edge of a tray after everyone else had been served. The food had gone cold. The gravy had turned thick and dull.
His blanket had slipped down around one wheel.
The left brake on the chair was loose.
That detail stopped me.
I had sent money 2 months earlier after Linda told me the wheelchair needed repairs. She said the brake was sticking and the left wheel was pulling. I had been in a supply office 3 states away, signing inventory forms between calls, when she texted me the estimate.
I sent the money that same afternoon. I even wrote, "Please make sure Dad gets the better parts." Linda replied with a heart emoji. Now the brake hung crooked under my father's thin hand, untouched.
Frank looked up at me, and for 1 second I saw the old version of him break through. Not strong, not young, but present. Completely present. His eyes moved from my face to the folded uniform jacket over my arm, then back to my eyes.
I knelt in front of him.
"Dad," I said, keeping my voice low, "why are you out here?"
His mouth worked slowly.
The stroke made every word expensive. He looked toward the house, then down at the plate. "Pictures," he managed. One word. That was all he could give me. But it was enough. The door opened behind me. Eric stepped in first, still holding his champagne glass. Linda followed, her face tight, with the kind of smile people use when they are furious but have guests nearby. "Emma," she said, "he's fine." I did not turn around. Frank's hands were cold. I picked up the blanket and tucked it around his lap. "He's freezing." "It's heated in here," Eric said. "It smells like gasoline." "It's a garage." I finally looked at him. He stared back like I was the problem that had arrived unexpectedly, not the daughter who had just found her father eating beside paint cans on Christmas Eve.
Linda stepped around him.
"Your father gets overwhelmed by crowds," she said. "You know that."
And there it was. The sentence that had carried more weight than I had ever realized.
He gets overwhelmed.
He's tired.
He prefers quiet.
He doesn't want visitors.
For years, I had accepted those explanations because they sounded kind. They sounded protective. They let me believe that Frank's world had become smaller because his body demanded it, not because other people had made it smaller for their own convenience.
The first memory came back then.
It was from the previous Easter.
I had been away for a training rotation, calling on a weak connection from a hotel room near Fort Pickett. I asked to see Frank. Linda turned the camera toward him for less than 10 seconds. He had been sitting near the back porch, half in shadow, wearing the same gray sweater he wore when he was cold.
I remembered saying, "Dad, are you warm enough?" Before he could answer, Linda pulled the phone back and said, "He gets chilly, but he likes the porch." At the time, I believed her.
Now I wondered if he had been left there because the house had guests.
The second memory followed before I could stop it.
July 4th.
Eric had posted photos online from a cookout in this same backyard. Chloe, Linda, neighbors, red plastic cups, paper flags stuck in cupcakes, everyone smiling. I had seen Frank's wheelchair in the background of one picture, half hidden behind a patio umbrella.
No Frank. Just the chair. I had called that night and asked why Dad was not in the photos. Eric laughed and said he was napping. You know how he is. I had accepted that too. Because accepting it was easier than imagining the alternative. The third memory hurt the most. 3 months earlier, Frank had missed my promotion ceremony on video.
Linda told me his medication made him sleep through it. I remember standing in a community hall after the ceremony, holding my phone, pretending it did not bother me. Later that night, a voicemail appeared from the house phone. No words, just breathing. Then a faint tapping sound, like someone trying to press buttons with a hand that would not obey.
I deleted it after listening twice. I told myself it was an accident. Standing in that garage, looking at my father's cold dinner, I understood that it might have been the only way he could reach me. That realization did not arrive like anger.
It arrived like nausea. Slow, deep, impossible to push away.
I had been trained to notice patterns in supply reports, maintenance logs, missing equipment, numbers that did not line up. I could spot a discrepancy in a warehouse manifest faster than most people could read the page. But inside my own family, I had ignored every discrepancy because each one came wrapped in a familiar voice. Linda touched my shoulder.
"You're exhausted," she said softly. "You're making this bigger than it is."
That softness almost worked. It had always almost worked.
Linda was not cruel in obvious ways. She did not scream unless she had already made sure the doors were closed. She did not insult Frank directly when others could hear. She simply managed the room until everyone accepted her version of what was reasonable.
Eric was different. He did not bother hiding his contempt unless it cost him something. He looked at Frank's plate and sighed. "Gave him food," he said. "What exactly is the issue?" I stood slowly. "The issue is that he is your stepfather." Eric's mouth tightened. "You married my mom. That doesn't make him my father." Frank's eyes dropped.
A small movement.
Barely anything. But I saw it.
And it took me back to another night, years earlier, when Eric was 17 and angry because Frank would not buy him a used sports car. I'd been home from college that weekend. Eric had shouted, "You always choose hers because she's some charity case you picked up." Frank had not shouted back.
He had only said, "Emma is my daughter." Eric left the house for 3 days.
Linda blamed Frank for being too harsh.
I had forgotten that part. Or maybe I had buried it because I needed family dinners to keep happening. Now every buried thing was rising. I looked around the garage, forcing myself to pay attention to facts instead of feelings. The old marine jacket Frank loved was not hanging on its usual peg near the door. A cardboard box sat open under the workbench, stuffed with folded fabric, old photographs, and a cracked wooden frame. On top of the pile was the edge of dark blue cloth with red piping.
His dress blues.
Folded wrong.
Pushed under Christmas storage like something embarrassing. I stepped toward the box.
Linda moved faster. "Don't go through that," she said.
Her voice sharpened enough that Eric glanced at her.
That was another red flag. Not the box. Her fear of me touching it.
"Why are his things out here?" I asked.
"Needed space," Linda said.
"What?" "Full tonight, for Eric, for one normal evening without everything revolving around illness and war stories." The words hung between us. Even Eric looked slightly surprised she had said them out loud.
Frank did not move.
That was the hardest part.
He did not defend himself.
He did not look angry.
He looked tired in a way that made me wonder how long he had been absorbing sentences like that while I was gone. I turned to him. "Dad, did you want to be out here?"
His fingers tightened on the armrest.
His mouth opened. Linda answered before he could. "Emma, don't do this to him."
I looked at her.
"Let him answer." The silence stretched. From inside the house came applause. Someone must have made a toast. Laughter followed, bright and careless, spilling through the hallway like the world had not shifted.
Frank worked his jaw. His breath caught once. Then he whispered no.
One word again.
But this one changed the temperature of the room.
Linda closed her eyes.
Eric set his glass on the dryer a little too hard.
"For God's sake," he said. "He doesn't even know what you're asking."
Frank looked at him then.
Slowly. Clearly. And in that look, I saw something I had not let myself see in years. My father knew.
He knew where he was.
He knew who had put him there.
He knew who had looked away. And maybe worst of all, he knew I had not known.
That was the wound that opened in me. Not just that they had failed him. That I had trusted them with the man who had never once failed me. I thought of every check I had sent, every rushed call I had ended because duty was calling, every time I told Frank, "I'll be home soon," without asking what home had become for him. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "How long?" Linda blinked. "How long has this been happening?" "No one is doing anything to him." "That's not what I asked."
Eric stepped between us, not close enough to touch me, but close enough to make the message clear.
"You don't get to show up in uniform twice a year and interrogate my mother in her own house." Her own house. Not Frank's. Not ours. Hers. That single phrase connected another line in the pattern. Over the years, Linda had stopped saying your father's house. Then she stopped saying our house. Lately on phone calls, she had started saying my house without correction. I had noticed and ignored it because language seemed too small to fight over.
It was not small.
It was ownership.
It was erasure. I picked up Frank's plate. The ham was cold enough that grease had hardened along the edge.
"Did he eat dinner with everyone last Christmas?" I asked. Linda's face changed.
Just a flicker.
"Enough." "Emma," she warned. "Thanksgiving?" Eric scoffed. "This is ridiculous." "His birthday?" No one answered. There were my 3 details, though I wished I had not found them. Easter porch.
July 4th photo.
Promotion voicemail. And now Christmas Eve. A pattern does not become a pattern because one cruel thing happens. It becomes a pattern when everyone around it learns how to explain it away. Frank moved his left hand. I looked down. He was reaching toward the side pocket of his wheelchair.
I bent closer. His fingers fumbled with the worn fabric until he pulled out a folded piece of paper. He pressed it into my palm with a kind of urgency that made my chest tighten.
Linda saw it.
"What is that?"
I did not answer. I unfolded it just enough to see a name written in shaky letters. Harlan Pierce. Below it, an old phone number. Eric laughed once, short and nervous. Probably some VA junk. But Frank's hand closed over mine. His eyes held mine with a focus so clear it made the whole garage disappear for a second. This was not junk. This was not confusion. This was my father handing me the first piece of a story no one in that house wanted me to hear. From inside, someone called Eric's name. The photographer was ready for the official family portrait. Eric straightened his jacket and looked at me like the matter had been settled.
"Leave him here," he said. "We'll deal with your little crisis after the pictures."
I looked at Frank. At the blanket. At the cold plate. At the folded paper in my hand. And for the first time that night, I stopped asking whether I was overreacting. I had spent years serving under orders. But the one order that mattered most had been given to me by the man sitting in that wheelchair. You don't leave people behind. I slipped Harlan Pierce's number into my pocket and reached for the handles of Frank's chair. "No," I said. Eric turned back. I looked him in the eye. "He comes with me." I had learned a long time ago that anger feels powerful in the first few seconds. Then it starts making decisions for you. Standing in that garage with Eric blocking the doorway, Linda watching me like I had become inconvenient, and Frank's cold dinner balanced on a toolbox, I wanted to let anger take over. I wanted to raise my voice loud enough for every guest in that house to hear what had been done. I wanted to drag the paper plate into the living room and ask Eric whether this was what family looked like to him. But Frank's hand was still on mine. Weak. Cold. Steady. And in that pressure, I remembered every lesson he had ever taught me without calling it a lesson. You do not win by making the loudest mess. You win by knowing exactly what happened. You win by not letting anyone rewrite it later. So I did not yell. I folded Harlan Pierce's number and slipped it into the pocket of my uniform pants. Then I reached for the handles of Frank's wheelchair. Eric moved half a step closer. "I said he stays out here," he said. "No," I answered. "You said that. I didn't agree to it." Linda's voice dropped into that careful tone she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. "Emma, please, the guests are waiting." "They can wait." "You are embarrassing us." I looked at my father, then at the cold plate, then at the box under the workbench with his dress blues half buried under Christmas garland. "No," I said. "You did that before I got here." For a second, no one moved. Then I pushed Frank's chair out of the garage and into the laundry room. The hallway seemed warmer than before, but not by enough. I stopped beside the washer and took my uniform jacket from where I had folded it over my arm. I placed it across Frank's shoulders. He tried to push it back toward me. I knew what he meant. He had done that my whole life, given back the warmer coat, the better piece of chicken, the safer excuse. "Keep it," I whispered. His fingers curled around the sleeve. Eric muttered something behind me, but I did not turn around. I needed facts now, not his opinion.
The laundry room had a small counter near the sink. I set Frank's plate there and took out my phone. I did not record anyone secretly. I did not want a shouting match on video. I took photos of what could not argue back. The cold food. The garage temperature on the old wall thermometer. The loose brake on the wheelchair. The blanket half dragging near the wheel. The open box containing Frank's dress blues. The empty spot in the living room where his Purple Heart display case used to be. Then I opened my banking app and searched Linda's name. 12 monthly transfers. Same amount. Same note from me. For Dad's care. I took screenshots of the transaction list, not because I thought money proved cruelty, but because it proved I had asked for care and paid for care, and now care had to be accounted for. Linda watched me from the doorway. "What are you doing?" "Making sure I remember tonight correctly." "You don't need to document your own family."
I looked at her.
If it's family documentation, shouldn't scare you.
Her face tightened. That was the moment I knew the night was bigger than embarrassment.
I wheeled Frank into his small bedroom at the back of the house. At some point after the stroke, the dining room had been converted for him because stairs were impossible. Linda always called it his suite when she talked to relatives.
It was not a suite.
It was a narrow room with a hospital bed, a dresser, and a window facing the side fence. But it was warm.
That was enough for the next 5 minutes.
I locked the wheelchair brake as best I could and checked his hands. His fingers were still cold, but the color was better. I wrapped a thicker blanket around him from the bed, then opened the drawer where his medication was supposed to be organized.
The pill case was there.
So was the chart Linda used to mention on the phone. But the chart had not been updated in 6 weeks. A physical therapy appointment card from October sat under a stack of unopened pharmacy papers. The appointment had been circled, then crossed out.
I took a photo. Not with dramatic satisfaction.
With shame,
because I had asked about therapy in November.
Linda had said, "He gets tired, we're taking a little break."
There it was again. The language of kindness used as a locked door. I opened the bottom drawer.
Inside were envelopes.
Dozens of them.
Some still sealed.
Some yellowed at the edges.
The return addresses were from all over the country: Virginia, Ohio, Texas, Arizona. A few had Marine Corps stickers on the back flap. One had handwriting so shaky it looked like it had taken the sender an hour to write Frank's name.
I picked up the top envelope.
It was dated almost 2 years earlier.
Linda stepped into the room.
Those are old. Then why are they unopened?
We didn't ask for them.
I turned the envelope over in my hand.
Did he know they came?
She did not answer.
Frank made a sound behind me.
Small. Frustrated.
I looked back. His eyes were fixed on the letters.
That was answer enough.
I carried the stack to his lap. His hand trembled as he touched the top envelope. He did not open it. He simply rested his palm over the name written there, like a person touching a window from the wrong side.
I took out the folded paper he had given me.
Harlan Pierce. The number looked old, with a Virginia area code. I hesitated before calling, not because I doubted Frank, but because part of me was afraid of what I would learn.
Then I remembered the voicemail from my promotion night. The breathing.
The tapping.
The message I had deleted because it was easier to call it an accident.
I pressed the number.
It rang 4 times.
A man answered with a voice like gravel and coffee.
Pierce.
My name is Emma Brooks, I said. I'm calling about Frank Brooks. The line went silent.
Not dropped. Silent. I could hear a television low in the background, then the sound of it being turned off.
Finally, the man said, "Is Frank alive?"
I closed my eyes. Those 3 words landed harder than anything Eric had said. "Yes," I said, "he's alive." The man exhaled, and something in that breath sounded like years leaving his body.
Thank God.
I looked at Frank. He was watching me with complete focus.
I found your name in his chair, I said. He gave it to me tonight.
Where is he? At home, in North Carolina.
Another pause.
Then Harlan Pierce said, "We were told he didn't want contact."
My throat tightened.
A woman who said she was his wife, years ago, then later a younger man, said Frank didn't remember us, said letters upset him, said it was better to leave him in peace.
Linda shifted near the doorway.
I looked at her. She looked away.
I put the call on speaker. "Harlan," I said carefully, "Frank is here with me. He can hear you." Frank's hand gripped the blanket. The old man on the phone did not speak right away. When he did, his voice changed. "Frank Brooks," he said, "2nd Platoon, you stubborn old jarhead." Frank's mouth moved. It took effort. Painful effort. But one word came through. Pierce. It was barely more than breath. But Harlan heard it. I knew he heard it because the sound he made was not a laugh and not a sob, but something caught between them. "You remember me," Harlan said. Frank's eyes filled.
Harlan went quiet for a moment.
Then he said, "Mom, I don't know what you've been told about your father, but he carried 3 of us out of a tree line in 1969 after the first medevac couldn't land. I was 19. I had shrapnel in my hip and no business being alive. Frank went back twice after they told him not to. The third time, he got hit. That Purple Heart of his, he never liked talking about it because he said medals only proved somebody bled.
But every man who came home because of him knew what he did. The room seemed to shrink around that voice.
Eric had followed us from the hall and now stood behind Linda, arms crossed, but he was not smirking anymore.
Chloe appeared behind him, confused and worried. She must have sensed the party outside had turned into something else. Harlan continued, "We sent Christmas cards every year, birthday cards too, after his stroke. A few of us tried to visit. We were told he couldn't handle it." Frank's fingers dug into the blanket.
I looked at the stack of unopened envelopes on his lap.
The discovery was not one photograph, not one hidden document, not one neat piece of proof. It was a pattern of closed doors.
A phone call that should have happened years ago.
Letters that had been intercepted. Money that had not reached its purpose. A chair that had not been repaired.
A man with a voice treated like he had none. I kept my own voice even.
Harlan, I need to ask you something. Did Frank ever say he wanted no contact?
No, Mom, never. Frank didn't abandon men, not in Vietnam, not after.
I swallowed. Would you be willing to tell me that again later if needed?
Yes. I'm not trying to create a scene, I said. I'm trying to understand what happened.
Sometimes understanding is the scene, he replied. I almost smiled despite everything.
Then Harlan asked, "Is he safe tonight?"
I looked at Frank. I looked at Linda. I looked at Eric.
"He is now," I said.
Good, Harlan said. Text me the address.
I hesitated.
I don't want trouble.
You won't get trouble from us. But if Frank Brooks is spending Christmas in a back room while people drink champagne in his house, then some men who owe him their lives are going to come shake his hand.
I did not answer immediately. That was the line I had to walk.
I could not control what Eric had done, but I could control what I did next. No threats.
No spectacle for the sake of spectacle.
No revenge. Just truth, witnessed by people who had the right to stand beside Frank. I said, "I'll send the address."
Then I ended the call.
The room was silent.
From the living room came the muffled voice of the photographer asking where the family had gone.
Eric let out a sharp breath. "You called strangers into this house?"
I placed my phone on the dresser.
"No, I called my father's friend."
"My mother's guests are here." "My father lives here."
Linda's face had gone pale.
"Emma, you don't understand what caregiving does to a person."
"You're right," I said. "I don't understand everything. That's why tomorrow I'm calling his doctor, his physical therapist, and the VA social worker listed in his folder. I'm going to review his appointments, his medications, and every transfer I sent for his care. Tonight, I'm making sure he is warm and not hidden."
Eric laughed, but there was no confidence in it. "You think your rank means something in this house?"
"No," I said, "and I'm not using it."
I stepped closer, not to intimidate him, but to make sure he heard me.
"I'm using my name, Emma Brooks, his daughter." Frank made a small sound. I turned. He was trying to lift his hand. I bent beside him. Slowly, with more effort than I had ever seen from him, he pointed toward the living room. Not the garage. Not the bedroom. The living room. He wanted to go back. For a second, I almost told him no. I wanted to protect him from their faces, their judgment, their polished cruelty. But protection can become another kind of silencing if you do not ask the person what they want. So I said, "Are you sure?" His answer came slow. "Yes." I unlocked the brake. Linda whispered, "Please don't." I looked at her, and for the first time, I did not feel like the child she could manage with guilt. "I'm not asking for your permission." I pushed Frank's wheelchair down the hall. The conversations in the living room faded as we entered. People turned. The photographer lowered his camera. Eric followed behind us, angry enough to speak, but smart enough not to do it in front of everyone. I wheeled Frank to the fireplace, right beneath the empty space where his marine photograph used to hang. Then I locked the chair.
No speech. No accusation.
Just a boundary in the middle of the room.
Frank would not be kept out of sight anymore.
The doorbell rang 10 minutes later.
Once. Then again.
Not frantic. Not dramatic. Measured. Linda looked toward Eric.
Eric looked toward me.
I already knew. When I opened the door, 3 pickup trucks were parked along the curb. Behind them were 2 motorcycles, engines ticking in the cold night air.
On the porch stood an elderly man with a cane, wearing a dark coat over marine dress blues. Behind him were 4 more men, all gray-haired, all standing straighter than age should have allowed.
The man in front removed his cap.
His eyes moved past me into the house and found Frank by the fireplace.
"Harlan Pierce," he said softly.
Then he stepped inside, brought his hand up in a slow salute, and looked at my father like the whole room had disappeared.
"Don't leave Marines in garages," he said.
No one clapped when Harlan Pierce said those words.
That is not how shame works in a real room. It does not explode. It spreads quietly.
It moves from face to face until people start looking down at their drinks, checking their phones, pretending they suddenly need air.
Harlan stood just inside the front door with his cap held against his chest. The other men behind him remained on the porch for a moment, as if waiting to be invited into a house that should have welcomed them years ago.
Frank sat by the fireplace beneath the empty space where his Marine photograph used to hang. His hands rested on the blanket across his lap.
His eyes were fixed on Harlan.
For a few seconds, neither man spoke.
Then Harlan walked across the room. Slowly. Carefully. His cane tapped against the hardwood with each step. He stopped in front of Frank, straightened as much as his body allowed, and saluted. Frank's right hand trembled. It took him longer than it should have. But he lifted it. Not high. Not perfectly. Enough. Harlan's face changed when he saw that salute. The hard lines around his mouth softened, and for one brief second, I saw the 19-year-old he had once been, standing in front of the man who had carried him out of a place he should not have survived. "Frank," he said quietly, "we've been looking for you." Frank's mouth moved. The word came out rough. "Pierce." That was all. But it was enough to make one of the men on the porch turn his face away. Eric broke the silence first.
"This is ridiculous," he said. "You people can't just walk into a private family event."
Harlan did not turn around. Neither did I. That may have been the first real consequence Eric felt that night. Not punishment. Not arrest. Not some dramatic public downfall. Just the sudden discovery that the room no longer revolved around him. Chloe stood near the dining room archway, one hand pressed to her mouth. Her eyes moved from Frank's cold plate, still sitting on the laundry room counter, to the men in dress blues, to Eric.
She was putting the evening together in real time.
So were the guests. A woman who had laughed at Eric's toast 20 minutes earlier set her champagne glass down untouched. A man near the Christmas tree whispered something to his wife, and they both stepped toward the hallway. Within minutes, people began leaving. No speeches. No confrontation. Just coats gathered quietly. Goodbyes mumbled without eye contact. The photographer packed his camera with trembling hands and slipped out the front door. The engagement party did not end with a scene. It ended with absence. That hurt Eric more than shouting would have. Harlan pulled a chair close to Frank and sat facing him. "I'm sorry," he said. "We believed what we were told." Frank blinked slowly. His hand moved toward mine. I took it. For years, I had thought protecting someone meant speaking for them, deciding for them, standing between them and every painful thing. But in that moment, I understood something I should have learned much earlier. Protection without listening can become another locked door. So I did not answer for Frank. I waited. His fingers tightened once. Then he looked at Harlan and managed 2 words. "Not you." Harlan lowered his head. Linda made a sound behind me. Not a sob. Something smaller. Almost irritation dressed as pain. "Emma," she said, "you have no idea what these years have been like." I turned to her.
For the first time that night, she looked older than I remembered. Not fragile, just exposed. The perfect blouse, the earrings, the careful hair, all of it suddenly seemed like a uniform she had worn too long.
I know caregiving is hard, I said. Her eyes filled quickly.
No, she whispered. You don't. You leave. You serve. You get thanked. I stayed here with the pills and the laundry and the silence.
I let that land, because part of it was true.
I had left. I had built a life around duty that other people understood and respected. Linda's work, when it had been work, happened behind closed doors without applause. But truth does not erase harm. I should have checked more, I said. That is on me. Linda looked relieved for half a second, as if my guilt might open a door for her. Then I continued. But being tired does not explain the garage. It does not explain the unopened letters. It does not explain telling his friends he wanted to be forgotten. Her face hardened. He was my husband, too. Then you should have known better than anyone that he deserved to be seen. Eric laughed under his breath. Oh, come on. We moved him for one evening. Chloe looked at him then. Really looked. An evening, she asked. He turned toward her. Not now. Yes, she said, voice shaking. Now. The room went still again. Chloe's hand moved to her engagement ring. She did not yank it off or throw it. Real decisions rarely look that clean at first. She simply twisted it once, then slipped it from her finger and held it in her palm. I need time, she said. Eric stared at her. You're serious? I need to know if this is who you become when someone is inconvenient. He had no answer. That was another consequence. Not destruction. Recognition. I looked at Frank. His eyes were on Chloe, and I wondered if he understood the strange mercy of that moment. Someone was stopping before building a life on the same silence that had nearly swallowed him. Harlan and the others stayed less than an hour. They did not threaten anyone. They did not turn the house into a courtroom.
They sat with Frank. They told one story from 1969 carefully, without making it sound like a movie. Harlan said Frank had carried 3 men to safety when the first evacuation could not land. Frank looked uncomfortable hearing it, the way he always did when gratitude came too close.
When Harlan finished, he looked around the room. He never called himself a hero, he said. Most of the men worth the word don't. Then he stood. He'll be back tomorrow if he wants us. This time everyone looked at Frank. Not Linda. Not Eric. After a long moment, he nodded. The next morning, I started making calls. Not angry calls. Necessary ones. His doctor. His physical therapist. The pharmacy. The VA social worker listed in an old folder Linda had kept under the desk. I made a timeline, missed appointments, canceled visits, money transfers, unopened letters, wheelchair repairs that had been paid for but never done. I did not file a lawsuit that week. I did not have anyone arrested. I did something harder for me. I stayed calm long enough to build a boundary no one could talk me out of. I stopped sending money through Linda. I arranged outside care with documented visits. I moved Frank into my small rental house near the base until I could request a transfer closer to Wilmington. Linda said I was punishing her. Eric said I was overreacting. Maybe they needed to believe that. It was easier than saying they had learned to make a man disappear because his needs interrupted their image of family. Frank lived with me for 3 more months. They were not perfect months. His body was tired. Some days he barely spoke. Some nights I sat beside his bed listening to him breathe, terrified I had found him too late. But he was warm. His letters were opened. His marine photograph sat on my mantle. His purple heart rested where he could see it if he wanted to, and ignore it if he did not. Harlan visited every Sunday. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat in silence like men who had earned the right not to explain themselves. Frank passed away in early spring just before sunrise. No dramatic final speech. No last-minute miracle. He simply went quiet in a room where he was not alone. After the small service, Harlan handed me a metal box. Frank asked me to give you this when you were ready, he said. Inside were 86 letters.
one for almost every time I had left home for duty. The handwriting grew worse over the years. Some letters were only 3 lines. Some had words crossed out where his hand had failed him.
The last one said,
"You spent your life protecting strangers. I hope you know you were never alone. Love, Dad." I read that sentence until the paper blurred. For years, I thought duty meant leaving when called.
Now I know it also means noticing who has been left behind.
And I still ask myself, quietly when no one else is listening,
How many people disappear inside families that keep smiling for photographs?